Coming to you from Strings and Things Studio in Ventura, California, I'm Karin.
I'm Kaity.
I'm Ann.
And this is the Strings Unraveled Book Club.
Woohoo! Yay. Okay, so what did we read this month, Karin?
We read The Vanishing Half, a novel by Britt, Bennet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to give us a little synopsis first, and then we can dive in with our discussion.
Cool.
The Veens twin sisters will always be identical, but after growing up together in a small southern black community and running away at age 16, it's not just the shape of their daily lives that is different as adults, it's everything. Their families, their communities, their racial identities. Many years later, one sister lives with her black daughter in the same southern town she once tried to escape. The other secretly passes for white, and her white husband knows nothing of her past. Still, even separated by so many miles and just as many lies, the fate of the twins remains intertwined. What will happen to the next generation when their own daughters' storylines intersect? Weaving together multiple strands and generations of this family from the deep south to California, from the 1950s to the 1990s, Britt Bennet produces a story that is at once a riveting emotional family story and a brilliant exploration of the American history of passing. Looking well beyond the issues of race, The Vanishing Half considers the lasting influence of the past as it shapes a person's decisions, desires, and expectations, and explores some of the multiple reasons and realms in which people sometimes feel pulled to live as something other than their origins. So first let's talk about what the title means in the before that, it's initial thoughts, feelings. What did you think?
It was a riveting story.
I thought it was fine. I wasn't that enamored with it. I enjoyed most of it. I didn't find it to be that riveting personally. I felt like it was relatively predictable once, you sort of got into it. You could see where it was going, and then there wasn't any like twist or anything, which I know it's not that kind of novel. Mm-hmm. But the end I felt was rather lackluster. Yeah, I thought it was fine. I didn't love it, but I might be alone in that. I can get more into it too, but initially, those are my
initial thoughts.
Those are my feelings.
I thought it was an interesting window into people's lives. Like I can hear your critiques of it too. Mm-hmm. Those things are definitely present. Like the predictability though, it's like a brain itch, like that's how I want it to finish.
Yeah.
So that's okay. The itch is scratched.
Sure.
But there was like as much to relate to actually as this was a strange course of events in people's lives.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Karin?
I think sometimes I lost track of the time frames, but I do like the when it says intertwining, like their name is Veens, but I always want to say vines, and sometimes their stories are like vines that go out and come back in. I liked you got a sense of the different generations, but not right away. It starts with a little bit of the history of the town that they grew up in, and you would think that let me just start off. The story starts off with Desiree returning home to Mallard, Louisiana after running away at age 16 with her twin sister Stella. That's not really where I wanted to start. Okay. I like the teeny bit of backstory about Mallard itself, the town itself. The town that they live in is so small that it never makes it onto a map, and eventually it gets wiped off the map and just sucked into neighboring little towns when map lines are redrawn, because they just the town that they grow up in was founded by light-skinned blacks after Reconstruction, the Reconstruction era, where if you were lighter, you didn't really fit in with the black community, and I felt like it kind of carried a little bit of its own its own racial trauma from, what's the word? Where lighter was more preferred rather than being comfortable in their own skin and seeing value in the whole person regardless of the shade.
Yeah.
So these twins are the daughters of, they come from a lineage of the founding fathers of this tiny little town. But when you meet them, they are 16 and their mom is working multiple jobs for various reasons, and some trauma happens in their life that we'll touch on in a little bit. But what about the title? It says the title what the title means in the context of the story. What do you think? What do you think that means?
Well, I see. You see that there's a lot of symmetry throughout the whole storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, each girl, Kennedy and Jude, are like the opposite halves that their mothers are separated from.
Right.
So there's a symmetry in them balancing each other's personalities. There was another moment of symmetry where nobody saw them leave at the beginning, and then nobody saw them reunite.
Right.
I like that symmetry. But I mean, there's constant. Your other half is severed from you, or there's some reason to be a boundary between relationships. So she keeps repeating in everyone's life.
I also saw that not just between
the
sisters, but also between husband and wife.
Yep.
Their father was taken from them in a very tragic way that they witnessed as children. The one of the daughters, she leaves her husband who is abusive, so that half of her partnership she had to leave behind. She needed she was the vanishing half of that for her own safety.
Well, the promise of the good man to stand by her, and the good husband vanished every time his personality changed.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you could accuse him of vanishing.
And then even I think Stella, she vanishes in her own marriage by not being who she was. And now the work that she has to go through to keep passing constantly separates her and keeps her out of community with other people like her. So yeah, there's a lot of symmetry. There were times where I thought where the story could have picked up, and then other times where it's like, oh no, she didn't. So we talked about. I started to talk about when Desiree, that's the one of the twins, she comes back. But we talked about the town. In many ways, the town is another character to the story. Let's talk about this and the impact of the town on both the twins and Desiree's daughter, Jude.
Yeah, so the town is a place where lighter-skinned people can, come together and feel safe and, make their own place, right? And the girls leave because, they feel trapped there in this small town and the terrible thing that happens to their father, and, so they escape to, I think, New Orleans first. And Jude, who is Desiree's daughter, is born to a much darker man than her mother, right? So Jude is much more darker skinned than anybody else in the town. And initially they don't live there, right? Desiree comes back and brings with her this very, very dark baby or child. I think she's maybe 7 or 8 at that point or something.
She's a little girl,
yeah. And the town doesn't like it or her or feels strange having her there with him, like with them. So she feels alienated because she's the only one like her who lives there, right? Like there's nobody else like her, so I can imagine how lonely that would feel, and also how much of a spectacle you would feel, right?
Constantly. And any thoughts?
No. I mean, that's,
Okay.
That's good, like, this is dangerous ground, too. I mean,
yeah.
So, that's it.
I will say, this, another, not problem, because it's my problem, it's not the book's problem, is that I don't have anything to relate to in this story. But I enjoyed learning about, another person's life, right? But, and, I learn things from reading other people's experiences that I don't, relate to personally. And that's obviously a thing that, you can do in literature very easily. I mean, we just read a book about a Greek goddess. I'm like, I'm not a Greek goddess. I can't relate to you. I'm also not a mother, so I can't relate to that aspect of the story. But it didn't mean as much to me as I think it could to somebody who related to these characters more. So I think that's part of why I wasn't super drawn into it. I mean, I can relate to, like, the family aspect of it, because that's sort of universal. I mean, their experiences are much different than mine, but sisterhood, mothers and daughters, all that, all those tricky things, I can relate to those. But I think that was one of the things that kept me from getting too drawn into the book, is that I don't relate to these experiences.
Yeah, like, then that's what I said earlier. Is like, this is a very interesting window into a way of life that, like, choices in life that I'm not faced with.
True.
Right.
So how I connected with it was, it made me kind of explore my own childhood a little bit, because being a person of mixed race during this time period, as I guess the girls would, not the 50s, but the 60s going into the 70s, and being told, I mean, I was raised by a white mother to be considered white. And I remember when you're supposed to fill out the census and when you're supposed to fill out stuff for school, even in like junior high and elementary school, they ask you, what race are you? And I was always that feeling of confusion, because they only let you choose one. And they don't say white, they say Caucasian. And learning what does Caucasian mean as a child, like, what is that? I don't know people who say I'm Caucasian, and not being allowed to put more than one. You have to choose. And so I felt like, well, that's kind of what they're having to do. The attitude of the town was that eventually the color would be bred out of them, because which is carrying its own trauma.
And yet they didn't pretend to not be black.
No,
right?
No.
Like, they wanted to turn their skin, like, to drive the color of their skin in a certain direction, but not
deny their blackness. Except yes and no, because the way they treated Jude, the way they stared at her. But I feel like that's them carrying the generational trauma that they were taught.
Yeah.
It's just they're thinking the same way that they were taught to think.
Of course.
Because they see who gets benefit in this world.
Yeah.
The lighter you are, the more benefit you have. So therefore, why wouldn't you try to have that? And so I'm with the more modern, the more recent discussion of melanated and listening to melanated voices about their experiences. I think it's really interesting. Anyway, so I don't relate to that entirely, because I kind of walked in a little bit in both worlds, but mostly in the white world, because that's how my mother raised me.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember some of that connection of my mother over time. I had this tan that never went away, and because I was darker when I was younger, and as my skin's thinned out, it's lightened up. But my mother just told me, "Oh, that's just your summer tan lasting all year long." I mean, I was a kid. I believed it.
So here you are experiencing a lie that Stella constructed for herself with purpose.
Yeah.
That your mother was constructing for you.
So that I would feel more comfortable, I guess. I don't know.
She would feel more comfortable.
She would, more likely she would feel more comfortable. And I was a very question-filled child, and so it was meant also to stop the questions.
Oh, like Kennedy.
Yeah.
I mean, can we talk about the least favorite character in the book?
Yeah.
Her life is so sad. Yeah, let's take a moment.
So sad.
I mean,
it's sad because she
she does nothing with her life.
Yeah, like she's
she had every privilege, every chance, and she does nothing with it.
Yeah.
She's like, so Kennedy is the cousin. So Jude is Desiree's daughter, and Kennedy is Estella for short, her daughter. And she grew up being in a very white, blonde hair, blue eyed, in a nice neighborhood. When she crashed her Camaro, she convinced Daddy to buy her another because she's got to drive. She still has to get herself to school, right? And you guys want to talk a little bit about? So what did you think? You said she's the least favorite.
I hate her. Yeah, I hate her.
Tell us more.
And this is a moment of like where I relate. So the like insanity that Jude would end up in the same town, in the same place, at the same moment as her estranged aunt and cousin has happened in my family. Like my great grandfather divorced my great grandmother, who was a horrible human being, and left my grandfather behind. And he was raised by his mother and and grandmother. And then he ends up in Santa Clarita, California. Or I'm sorry, my mother, child of this abandoned child, ends up in Santa Clarita. And there in the same town is her cousin, born of this separate family that my great grandfather had.
Right there.
From
in the
Minnesota.
Same town.
From
Santa
another
Clarita,
state. California.
Wait. So we're not talking about like California to California. They were like in a whole other part of the United States, and they ended up in the same town, not knowing each other.
This story starts in Minnesota and ends in Santa Clarita.
Wow.
And the other family member does not want to be involved. They don't want our lines to mix and know each other.
Well, somebody better move. It's not going to be you.
So, I mean, I moved. Yeah. I don't know.
That's true. That's true.
But it's big enough anyway. They do not socialize. But I've had that experience in my family. So that's where I was like, oh, yeah, okay.
I was going to say that would never happen.
No, totally realistic.
That's crazy.
And completely insane, right?
Yeah.
But there it is. I've seen that happen. So I relate to that, like, fracture of a family. You end up in the same place at the same time,
right?
It's insane. You think it's a literary device, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, it happened in my family, and that fracture is never going to be healed. And,
right.
And you know, whatever. Who cares? Those are strangers to me.
We had a similar thing, but not trauma, not negative. It happened. So, our youngest niece, my sister-in-law's youngest daughter, has her own children, and they live in Santa Clarita. But they haven't been out to see my mom-in-law, their grandmother, and the great grandkids have not seen. I don't know that they don't really know my mom-in-law because they were babies when the one time that they met. So my mother-in-law and my husband decided that they're going to go to the beach on the Friday before 4th of July. And we like to go up to Carpinteria, right? But they got a little bit of a later start, so they ended up going to a different part of the beach than they normally go to. And my youngest niece, who has never been to that beach ever, it was the first time ever, happened to be going with, like, having a mommy and me day with her friend, and they happened to be in the same, not just at the same part of the beach, but 2 blankets away. And my mother-in-law goes, "Hey, I think that's Charlie's kids," and because we've seen them on Instagram, and we're like, that is. And they look over at the same time, and there they are.
Huh.
And it's not a day that my husband and my mother-in-law would ever normally go to. It's not the same part of the beach, and it's the first and only time that our youngest niece has ever even been to that beach.
Wow.
And here they were, and they spent some time together.
Yeah, it's
so
interesting.
That was a pleasant visit.
You get magnetized to your people sometimes.
Things just happen. Speaking of characters and things that just happen, Desiree and Stella's father is murdered by white men in a horrific crime that sees no justice. I mean, they beat him to a bloody pulp and leave him to die in front of it. Or did they string him up? They did.
He's lynched twice.
He's lynched he's lynched, and when he didn't die and he was in the hospital, the white man barged into the hospital to finish the job. I mean, but the first part of it, the twin girls see it. They're kids. I mean, and they're like shaking, and they've got their hands over each other's mouths so that they're not noticed. And it impacts the sisters in different ways. Desiree seems to bury it, but Stella is very traumatized. Why do you think Stella made such a significant decision to leave behind everything and deny a huge part of who she is?
Well, so that question is linking those two events, which I hadn't really thought of linking them.
She has the nightmares for a long time, but it's interesting because her daughter also has nightmares, and that may just be a genetic thing.
Yeah.
But
I don't know how conscious her decision was, because I think she consciously went for this job at like a law office or wherever it was. When they didn't realize that she was black, she didn't correct them. But I don't think she lied and said she was white initially. I think that people assumed that she was, so she went with it, right? And then when she had the opportunity, she started dating, her boss essentially, and he didn't recognize anything. I don't think it was a conscious effort on her part to be like, I'm going to pretend like I'm a white person. I think that she noticed what was happening and thought, I'm not going to stop it. She's benefiting from it, and she's, realizing that the things that she is accessing are different from what she, is normally able to. So I don't know how conscious that decision was for her until it started happening to her, not on her own.
But that was not the first time she pretended to be white.
She tried that she tried it 2 times, right, while she lived in Mallard. But like, if we're linking this idea that her father's violent death is the cause of her choice to step into whiteness, so she's going towards the thing that is dangerous and terrifying to her.
Yeah.
And she's putting herself in the middle of it, seeking safety and security. Right?
Yeah, I could see that.
Or at some point she describes it as freedom, that she feels free as living as a white person.
In a way that her father wasn't, maybe.
Well, I mean, he just tried to start his own business, right?
Yeah.
So, like, supposedly the cause of his death was he enraged the white guys who he was underbidding and doing a better job, and they were filled with rage and came and killed him for that.
Yeah.
So you're right. He had no freedom to just exercise,
right.
Earning a living. So she puts herself in the thing she's afraid of to be free of it.
I don't know.
But she's never not afraid because she sleeps with the bat forever.
Yeah.
I almost feel like she not only equates that with freedom, but like you said, security. And that she equates blackness with not being secure because of what the violence that happened to her father, to not being able, the frustration of not being able to get a job as soon as because she tried to get a job in other places before she got that one job. But as soon as she put black down, they just kind of didn't even look at her application and basically said, you need not apply. And to some extent, Desiree also got that. I mean, I like that she had been, what was the job that she was? She learned to read fingerprints for the federal government.
Yeah.
And yet, even with that experience, she couldn't get a job.
Yeah, in her hometown.
In her hometown.
Right. Yeah. So when she's not specifically in her hometown, but in her home area, because she goes to the next real city over, and they say no.
Right.
She's perfect. She's absolutely qualified and perfect at it. And then he sees her race. Or no, he doesn't even see her race, actually. He sees where she's from.
Oh.
Yeah.
He sees her address, and that's when he says, no, thank you, bye.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about the fact that when Stella takes on the new identity as a white woman, that her past doesn't leave her. What do you think about the idea that no matter how far away home is, it never leaves you?
I mean, it's like the old saying is like, wherever you go, there you are, right?
Yeah.
So you can run away and do whatever you want to try and get away from your past or whatever you think is following you, but you're still going to carry it with you. The experience is with you wherever you go, So you can put as much distance between yourself as you want, but the thing she's scared of is that she is a black person, and she's afraid that people are going to find that out about herself. California is probably at this time, less dangerous place to be than the Deep South, but it's still not safe. Yeah. So when faced with the possibility of a black couple moving into her all-white neighborhood, she's absolutely terrified that she's going to be found out. Like, they're going to know that she is passing for as a white person. And so regardless of wherever she is, and I can't remember her
it's like a
Mississippi.
Louisiana.
Mm-hmm. Louisiana or California, the problem's still there.
You were gonna say something, Anne?
I was just gonna say, when they're starting that part of the book, you didn't know where they were going, right? So I'm like, is this just going to be a passing demonstration of her,
right?
Keeping arm's distance from what she's escaping? And then I'm like, so it's Brentwood at this time. I mean, that's the Simpsons moving in. That's O.J. Simpson and his first wife moving into Brentwood. Yeah. But that's not where the book went.
No, but that would have been fun.
Okay, but
not funny,
this portion of the book,
a weird moment.
Yeah. This portion of the book that talks about Stella and her neighborhood and redlining and keeping black people out of their neighborhood. There was during the pandemic, there was that series. Did you guys see it? It was kind of like a horror film series. It was about a black family that moved into the husband got a job in aeronautics or aerospace. He was an engineer, and they moved from the South to California. They moved into this really nice neighborhood where all the white neighbors were just absolutely horrid to them. I mean, burning stuff on their lawns. I mean, just nasty, horrible to them. Based on what really happened here in California, in Southern California. And so much of this just was like, it's like I'm watching that TV
I was
series.
Surprised that she's willing to go near the SC campus, because on one side of the freeway is SC, and it's gilded and beautiful and whatever. But literally the same street, you go under the freeway, and it's exactly what she wants to escape. Like, wow, you're willing to go by SC? Okay, interesting.
You just stay on one side of the campus, I guess.
Yeah.
But when the woman and her family come into the neighborhood, she's like a moth to the flame. She really can't stay away.
Yeah.
She tries, but then she bakes this, what did they call it, a lame ass cake?
Yes.
Or how did what was it, just
a lumpy lopsided. I've never seen such a lopsided
cake. It's like, oh, I don't know. It reminded me so much of the telling of that show that was just on last year. So I wish I gotta figure out the name of it, but
what that is.
Yeah.
I just remember because I listened to the last hour and a half or so this morning, and Kennedy is talking about a memory of her mom making the cake, and I did not connect until right now
that it was the same one.
Because like, why is she making a cake? She never makes cakes, and then she's like peppering her with all these questions.
Yes, yeah, I was like, oh, that was the same one day she ever baked a cake.
Yeah,
the one time.
That's not where you're from. That was a good moment. Like,
keep talking while I figure out the name of that series. Hold on.
When Kennedy calls her mom out as a little girl, like, you're not from
something with
Appaloosa.
You told me once, yeah, because she told her once when she was like, 4 or 5 or whatever. She's like, well, you're never gonna remember. So
that was like a wicked moment of like, here, lick the spoon.
Yes,
I'm straight out lying to you.
Yeah, and there is that whole like aspect of it where Kennedy knows her mom's a liar.
Yeah,
and knows pretty much her whole life that her mom is lying to her, and Stella knows that Kennedy knows that she's lying to her.
Yeah. Well, the effect of her mother's gaze upon her.
Them.
Oh, okay. I saw that
Yeah.
advertised. It was recommended for me many
It
times.
explores the terror of in America, kicks off the season about a black family that moves into a white neighborhood in the 1950s. It's from, I guess it was on Amazon Prime. It is just, wow. It's really,
I think
is
it a Blumhouse production?
Probably. But it's so much of this story reads, of this portion, Stella's portion of the, reads like it's just out of them.
Mm-hmm.
The way the neighbors treat her, the catty neighbors. I mean, but here's this brilliant, really smart woman who, when you meet her in her life in California, she waits for her child to go to school, pours some vodka in her cup, hoping that the housekeeper thinks it's water while she floats around in the pool.
Yeah.
It's like she's not putting her life to her potential either. And maybe some of that maybe she lost some of that when her mom pulled them out of school so that they could start working and helping with expenses. But okay, so another question.
I think
yeah.
It's interesting that Loretta gets her back on the right path.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because she doesn't waste her whole life.
She doesn't.
You know, and she's actually still relatively young as we get to the end of the book. She's probably only maybe 50, maybe.
Oh, you think that's young?
Well, now that I'm in my 40s,
yeah.
It seems young.
The older you are, the younger that.
Yeah.
The younger that group.
But still, like, I mean, 50 in 1988 or whatever is not 50 now, honestly.
True.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, she's still young.
So there are questions here about Stella's relationship with Blake, but Blake doesn't really interest me. So, but if you guys have interesting thoughts about Blake you want to share, here's a moment.
I mostly liked the reader's voicing of most characters except Blake. Because I mean, she was doing something back east, but it was not.
Yeah, it was a little hard.
Not Massachusetts.
Yeah,
that was kind of annoying. Yeah, Blake's not that interesting either. I mean, he's a fine token for what he. Because, like, represents. He does notice that he's like, it's kind of shameful how mean my wife is about black people.
And he's pretty kind. Like, I don't think she's afraid, like, if he found out. As the reader, I was sort of reading into it that if he did find out, I mean, he would feel betrayed that she had lied to him. But it's not like that would be a thing that upset him initially. If she had told him that she was black, I don't think that would have,
it wasn't the blackness that would bother him, but the fact she lied about it.
Yeah.
I don't think she can ever tell him. I don't think
not at that point. No.
But I mean, like, at any point. Because
it would still affect his place in business.
Yeah, he's still about the show.
Yeah. And
her being of a poor background was as far as, like, he was willing to push his mother's edges,
That's true.
That's true. Yeah, he would be okay with it as long as she just kept pretending and be quiet about it, is my feeling.
Maybe.
But she's better off not.
I mean, she never gives him that chance.
No.
So Blake is only as developed as Stella allows us to see him, I guess.
Yeah.
Even. Because there is a little bit of time in his head, isn't there?
Not that I can recall.
No? Okay.
But I also just might not remember.
He's just not that interesting a character. I didn't care enough about him to think about him. Other than he mildly affects things in her life, but not by much. I mean, he's whatever she wants, he gives it to her.
I think he extremely affects her life because he is the tool to her privilege.
Yeah, well, that's true.
But as a character, he's rather one-dimensional.
Yeah. So
as a tool, he's really useful.
What do you think about the relationship between Desiree and Early?
I liked Early.
I love it. Yeah, I like their relationship.
Yeah, that was part of the book that I really did enjoy listening to. Was
Early's perspective. Talk about Early a little bit and
how much. I enjoy listening to how much Early seemed to really love his family. You know, his girlfriend. I mean, they never got married, but his not daughter, but sort of daughter, and yeah, I liked it. I thought that was pretty genuine.
Yeah, I like. So Early is a bounty hunter
Mm-hmm.
who is set to find Desiree when she escapes Sam, her
Mhm.
first husband.
Her abusive husband.
Yeah. And so he had just been thinking of her.
Because he knew her from childhood.
Well, he'd just been thinking about her. Like, the way I remember it in the book
Mhm.
is, like, the chronology is he happened to be musing about her. He meets his boss. I don't know.
The guy who gives him
freelance
his
assigner.
freelance,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and there is this picture of the girl he'd just been thinking of.
Yeah.
I love the way it says in the book, like, it was as if he had conjured her. And there she is. Which I also love those moments in life where, like, you're thinking of somebody you haven't seen in 10 years and something about them tangible comes up.
Yep.
So he gets there, he sees the bruise on her neck, he says, I'm sure in his head he says, I'm letting this girl go.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
And now he knows where she is, so now he can reunite with her and have the love affair that they were denied as children because he's a very, like, I don't know how to describe it. He's a dark-skinned person. Yeah.
He is darker skinned,
and
not as dark as her husband Sam.
Yeah.
But
she went to 11 with Sam.
Yeah.
And well, actually, she did the same thing with Early as she did with Sam, which is she went to the person showing her interest as a unique, singular person, which both the twins seek is their singularity. And they're hungry, or at least Desiree, I think, is hungry for that singularity as much as she misses her sister. Early just is a good guy, and so her trust in his interest in her is not misplaced. And they had a little flirtation when they were children, but Mom shooed him away. Adele shoos him away, and then he moves on because their family
I love when
is
she goes,
migrant.
there's nobody of courting age here.
Yeah, right.
Got no girls of courting age here.
Yeah.
Move along. Did you notice in some respects, Jude parallels her mother in that only who she connects with is not a kind person.
Jude?
Yeah, when Jude is in school later on.
Oh yeah, she's hungry for that.
She's also hungry for that kind of attention, but she ends up connecting. See, on the down low with who is it, the mayor's son or someone?
He's just a boy.
He's just a boy
school.
from school.
He's
a
bully.
Popular boy.
Like,
he's her bully.
Publicly her bully, and then privately her molester.
Right.
I mean, they're peers, so I can't really put it that way. But he's definitely like coercing her into a sexual relationship for the price of his attention.
Until Early puts a stop to it, which I'm really glad for.
Early. But I like Desiree and Early's relationship, that no matter where they go after they reconnect, they're still interested in each other.
Yeah.
You know?
To the point, but it's interesting because I'll hold off on that thought. He cares so much for her that eventually, as he gets older, he gives up his job to take care of her mother.
I love that.
Who is suffering from dementia, and he is the kindest, most wonderful soul to her. He takes her out fishing, and when she's like, I gotta do this for Desi. Desi's at work. Oh, I gotta get to work. Oh, don't you remember you got the day off? Oh, the whole day?
Yeah, that was sweet. And,
he is so kind. He's one of my favorite characters. Is Early.
The description of him braiding her hair is so sweet.
Yeah, how he enjoyed doing it.
Yeah. Was that for... What's the mom's name? I forgot.
I think it's Adele.
Adele.
I think.
Yeah. So he braided Adele's hair? Or Jude's?
Yeah. No, there's a description. He wasn't that physically
present,
demonstrative with Jude, because every time he is demonstrative, there's note of it, like when she's crying over this boy,
he gave her a hug or whatever.
That's true.
No, like he was braiding Adele's hair. It's part of the caretaking that was described, that he saved her from burning down the house and bought an instant coffee machine, and then she stopped making coffee and he makes it for her now, and all those sweet things. So Early's lovely. Early is worthy.
All the way through. from child to older gentleman. He is just a kind person all the way through.
I mean, there's something about losing your dad that you don't understand male attention. I made plenty of mistakes in my interpretation of boys and men as I grew up. And I know that part of those pitfalls are from losing my dad as a young girl. So that's evident in these girls and that's another place where I was able to connect with them is all these girls who lost their fathers young, like look at the confidence Kennedy moves through the world.
Yeah.
Like, she never really connects well with men either, but that's her thing. That's her selfishness.
Right.
But we see these hungry young girls who fall into whomever's granting them attention. And like Jude, we see her have a negative relationship, and then we see her have a beautiful relationship. But that is luck.
Yeah.
That's the quality of the men they encountered.
Right.
And that is parallel. I'd see that parallel in Desiree, absolutely.
Now that's interesting. See, I grew up without any kind of father figure whatsoever. So I didn't lose a father figure, but I still didn't connect to that longing in the same way because I don't know what I didn't have. I didn't know what I didn't.
Because that longing for a father is a different set of emotions.
I don't mean longing for a father, but male attention.
Okay.
I don't know that I had it in the same way. Of course, I'm older and I might have forgotten that part of my life.
Right. I mean, I don't know.
I mean,
you also don't know what's conscious and what's subconscious, you know.
True.
So.
I mean, everyone wants to be cared for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true too.
So.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Jude a little bit. So Jude is bullied in Mallard and they tore down her confidence, but she gets a scholarship to UCLA and she eventually flourishes. Let's talk about Jude's character development a little bit in the story. I love that that one brief little moment of her description of her roommate. When she first comes into the dorms and her roommate's got stuff all over the walls and all over the place and she sees Jude with just one little bag. She's like, "Where's the rest of your stuff?" And Jude's like, "Oh, I left it in storage."
Yeah.
And they both know it's a lie.
Do they both know it's a lie?
She says she knew that when she never asked about it again, that they would be good friends. But that's the only mention they have of her roommate, who's not crucial to the story. But it's the very beginning of a relation.
I kept
a change in her, a change of possibility in friendship.
I kept wondering about that girl just every once in a while as the story progressed, because that's pretty early on. It's like the first quarter of the book, like. Because when Kennedy's like, "You don't have a lot of friends like me," and she's like, "White girls?" And she's like, "No, I mean girlfriends." And then I was like, what happened to her roommates? Like, did she really just...
I completely forgot that she had one.
Yeah, did she just disappear?
She had a roommate. The roommate invited her to a party.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was just the vehicle that made her... That's the bridge that connects her to... Reese.
Which that was going to be my name, by the way. Therese Ann.
Wow.
But then my sister named the dog Teresa.
Oh.
Well, my mom was pregnant. So my mom went with the Ann and had to find a new middle name. That's funny. I was like, "Oh, that's my name."
Your name's not Indy? You were named after a dog?
We named the dog Indy. Yeah. No. Not Indy. That was funny.
I can't remember. What did she got a scholarship to UCLA, but was that for running? For track.
Yeah. She was a runner.
A runner. Let's see. So there's another question about her and Kennedy, but I want to put that to the side because we're introduced to Reese, the love of her life. And let's talk about the romance and how they bonded through their traumatic past. Or even, we don't even have to do that. Let's just talk about Jude and Reese.
Yeah.
What did you think?
I liked Reese. I think his character is there to draw a parallel between him sort of passing, in quotes, as a male, and Stella passing as a white person. You know, there's two different aspects of it. And
two fake social constructs, gender and race.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This was one of the parts of the story that I found to be a little frustrating, is that I thought that there was a really interesting story there to tell that we never really got below surface level on of Reese's experience.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, maybe that's a different book, you know, he's a side character, but I felt like we knew more about, like, Early as a side character, or, you know, than we ever learned about Reese. And like I said, I think there was more to be said, and maybe it got cut out. I don't know.
Yeah.
There was more. I think that would have been really interesting to draw closer comparisons between the two, or to just let us know a little bit more about his experience besides the little bit that we got here and there. We got a little introduction to him at the beginning, where he, you know, got on a bus and drove across country and shaved his head in the bathroom, and meeting, you know, some bodybuilder who was going to give him testosterone, and of Jude's story.
Yeah.
In that she's trying to earn money so that he can have his top surgery and his experience with that. But I just felt like maybe there was more, and that's sort of the problem I also have with Stella, is that we never hear anything about the repercussions of anything, which is good because it's a happy ending for us, that, like, nothing bad happened to Reese and nothing bad happened to Stella.
Mm-hmm.
But
what do you? Well, what did you expect to happen to Stella? Are you thinking, like, she didn't get found out? Or...
Kind of. I was sort of expecting, with the arrival of what's her name?
Jude.
No, her neighbor.
Oh, Loretta.
Loretta. That maybe I think it would have been more motivating, or a little bit more exciting if she had been found out, or somebody else found out, or somebody else knew.
I did think that Loretta and her friends would have recognized.
I have no idea. I don't know.
Or if they did, they didn't
say
anything.
She assumed that they would, but they didn't, or they didn't say anything. But I felt like they probably would have said something if they did. Yeah. But also, I have no idea, you know, if you would or wouldn't recognize.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the interesting thing about this story being examined in the written word and not at all in visuals, because we don't know exactly what Stella and Desiree look like.
I was trying to sort of,
I know, I was really trying to
out like an actress I could compare to or something.
Well, I know who would play Jude. I have to look her up, but the girl who played the best friend in the HBO thing about vampires.
I don't know.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
I was sort of picturing, I mean, she's like a Meghan Markle kind of deal for the girls, because she's an African American woman, but she's very light skinned, right? But then I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know what that looks like.
I chose Lisa Bonet.
Okay,
young Lisa Bonet, but with a different hair.
Okay, the other thing I was thinking,
because they never talk about their hair being a challenge.
No, never. The other thing I was thinking was, like, Zendaya.
I thought Zendaya a little bit, but Zendaya, yeah, she's not quite.
I don't know. I don't know. See,
because again, this is dangerous ground.
That's what I'm saying. Is like I feel bad that I can't think of any other examples, because I know there are plenty. But I'm like, I don't know what these girls look like, and it would have been easier for me to.
Well, and so
understand,
and we don't know what they would have looked like in that time period.
Well, there's a movie with that examines passing over from like the 1960s, but I think it's like Natalie Wood playing the white daughter, or the passing daughter. Like,
come on, get someone who's really. I remember to play a passing person. I hate that.
But that's something. So the thing that you're talking about wishing she'd be discovered, is dealt with by the author. Of saying, it's like, I mean, it's not called this, but she's like, it's a little bit of Schrodinger's cat. Like, you're never gonna know about someone who is successful their whole life passing.
That's true.
Because then they wouldn't be successful.
That's true. And it's like I said, it's not that I wanted something bad to happen to Stella or to Reese, but it would have been a more exciting book if some sort of action had happened. You know, that's why I was like sort of complaining at the top, was like there was no like catalyst moment. Like she goes back home because her daughter, you know, sort of finds her out, you know, and Stella's like, okay, I'm going to go home and confront Desiree because I think it's Desiree's fault that my daughter knows this, or it's Jude's fault that my daughter, you know, she's still worried about herself the whole time. So when she goes back to like confront Desiree, what happens? Like nothing. They sit and they chat and they spend the night together.
They're angry together.
Yeah.
And then they reminisce, but then she still runs away. She tries to run away because she doesn't want, she that's what she does. She runs away from things.
And I've sort of pulled us away from our conversation that you started about Reese, but
well, that's fine. We can come, because we can come back to Reese.
Well, it is interesting to put gender identity in this big book.
Yes.
Because it's big in its own. You know,
yeah, it lightly touches on it, and I wonder, it makes me wonder during that time period how people dealt with it. I mean, because I know they lightly touched on, going back to Reese for a moment, that, well, one, like Desiree often knows when Jude brings Reese home, what, I guess for her grandma's passing or something like that, or for something like that. Maybe it's before that.
I think it was at the end of the book.
Oh, toward the end. And she's like, when are you going to give me some grandkids? And there's like there's like the awkward silence because or when are you going to get married? And they're like, well, they can't tell her that until they can legally change his birth certificate. They can't do that without changing a birth certificate, and they can't do that. And even can't, it seems to me they were together a long time. I feel like they were together like a decade or something before he got the surgery, because they had to come because they go to Chicago and then they're in New York.
She hadn't seen her for 3 years since the show closed. And the Midnight Marauders was between her summer after college ended.
See, they never explained how they get to was it Boston or no, to the Chicago area?
No, they're in Minnesota.
Oh, Minnesota, whatever.
Is a place where there are excellent medical schools.
Yeah, she went there for medical school. I do
think it was
when they see each other
in New York. I feel like
they say it.
They say
it's 3 years.
But it felt like there was a longer stretch because when Kennedy was
the book jumps all around timelines.
When
which
Kennedy
that's
was
frustrating.
when Kennedy was in New York, was that after the soap opera?
No, it was before.
That was before the soap opera.
Way before the soap opera.
Oh, that's right. She's still doing theater. Yeah. She decided to give everything up and just do theater.
Yeah, her story, we jumped far ahead of the end of the book, and I don't think we did that with anybody else's character. Because we knew what her life was like when she was like a middle-aged woman, and she's doing like TV advertisements for like various, products on TV after she had been a soap star. So I think we were like way ahead time-wise from the end of the book, and the book ends with their grandmother's funeral because Jude and Reese like jump in the lake together, right? And that's like the very end of the book, I think.
And how maybe at that point that's after the surgery then?
Yeah,
it has to be after the surgery.
Supposed to symbolize he wouldn't he obviously
he wouldn't have been topless
shirt off before that.
Yeah.
So it's symbolizing, that he's no longer feeling like he has to hide who he is,
True.
Okay, Rutina Wesley would be Jude. She was in True Blood, and she can do the Louisiana accent.
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
So now that I'm looking at
I don't know who that is.
You didn't watch.
I didn't watch True Blood.
She's been in other
things.
Are you
surprised I didn't watch a thing?
About vampires.
Yeah,
but it's.
I saw Twilight. Is she in Twilight?
It's way sexier vampires than Twilight.
I knew that.
So if you like Twilight, you're gonna really like True Blood. I'm a little.
I always
jealous.
have to write down my future movie and
you
book
didn't watch
things.
You watched True Blood.
I haven't.
Oh no!
I am going to because I would like vampire stuff. Although I don't like Twilight.
Romance.
I never read Twilight. It was not a good place in life when that was
that was a joke.
Oh, okay.
How dare I scoff at romances? Because more and more I think about that. I read all of the True Blood series.
Yeah.
And I watched the movie, the show.
Yeah, what the heck?
Oh, I would read the books.
Yeah, I'm a monster. You know that. The books are great. They're fun, easy reads.
I want to touch real quickly. Why do you think that the author gave us a big chunk of older Kennedy's life, but nobody else got that? We didn't find out the great doctor
That's
that
what I'm
Stella
saying.
got to be. And all the key characters, only the white girl got to have the.
I don't think it's to give her. It
I
actually
don't
is
think it
reminding
is,
me of a literary moment in
Maybe it's just how sad and
in one of the
pathetic her life
Bronte
was.
books. Yeah, it's kind of maybe to illustrate to us that she doesn't ever evolve.
No.
She never does.
She never evolves, whereas everybody else is evolving, like early evolves. Desiree and Stella have their journey still.
Mm-hmm.
I actually wouldn't say that they evolve very much.
I do.
Really
No.
looking at that.
No.
But Jude, for sure.
I love how, Jude's response to Desiree's saying, why aren't you guys, y'all are not going to sleep together unmarried in my house? And she's like, yeah, what about you and Early?
Yeah.
Come on, Mom. There's a little bit of...
Well, so then when I settled on Rutina Wesley, it was like, well, why not? Like Kennedy, the idea of Kennedy just got whiter and whiter. So like, how about what's her face with the chin?
What's her face with the chin?
Now I'm...
She was in Election.
Oh, Reese Witherspoon?
Thank you. Sweet Home Alabama.
I somehow never equated her with her chin. That's interesting.
Oh my God. She has such a... I mean, I love her ish.
Do people talk about that? Does she know about her chin?
Oh, she knows about her chin.
Does she know?
Does she know about her chin? She has to look at her own face.
This is a thing that people talk about?
I feel like in caricatures of her that
Probably.
they emphasize her chin.
We're not talking about like the weird character, oversized head caricature that someone at the fair draws of you. But with
no, I
Reese
mean,
Witherspoon.
like, if they were going to do her on Robot Chicken, the doll would have like a serious chin.
Yes.
So like that high of a contrast.
Yeah, between the two.
Yeah. So
we talked about wife. Stella.
I wasn't done.
Okay, yeah, continue. That's fine. Continue.
The literary device in one of the Bronte books, I think it was in Jane Eyre. She's like one. You meet a lot of people in her life. It spans her whole life, from her little girl to her into her adulthood, and there's a point where she meets up with some family. She's reunited with some estranged family, and she's like, I'm not going to talk about them again. So here's what came of them. And then she moves on and never mentions them again. So it felt very much like Kennedy, this is all that Kennedy came to.
Yes.
So let's just wrap it up.
It's like at the end of a movie when, like an older movie, like an 80s movie or something, when, like, you get the, like, wrap up at the end. It's like, where everybody is now, and the bully is like, he still works at McDonald's, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's a little like, yep, she's still doing what she's doing.
Yeah. So I think it was to just give us a cap.
And why do you think that Kennedy never connected emotionally with anyone beyond what they could serve her? Her whole life.
Her mother and her father taught her that. So, right?
Yeah.
Her father just gave her anything she wanted, and her mother never connected with her.
Yeah, how could you ever learn to connect with anybody if your own mother is, that your own mother is constantly lying to you?
Yeah.
That's true. That is the nature.
And the way she looked at her. My sister had a contentious relationship with both my parents, and still has a contentious relationship with my mom. So she sent me a picture she took of my parents, and I recognized the look they were giving her, and I realized how they never looked at me that way. How could you feel loved when your parents look at you that way? And so, like, Kennedy knows that her mother doesn't want her.
Right.
It's not that she doesn't want her, but she doesn't want to be connected to her.
Right.
Until they finally connect, and, So I guess.
By mutual lies.
Well, no, on the way home from the airport.
Eventually they do. That's true. They get to share each other's secret or something.
Yeah, she says, "Ask me anything" on their drive from the airport to home, and so the one person that finds her out is the one person she was maybe hiding the most from. I don't know, because Kennedy finds her out. She lays it out all on the table for her. Like, I don't know. Kennedy is a useless person because her parents ruined her. That was my son.
I'm thinking Stella. I don't think Stella really connected with her mother. In some respects, even though they're twins, she and Desiree are so different. And maybe leaving at 16, maybe the trauma of her father consumed so much of her that she didn't connect with her mother. And I feel like she just didn't know how to draw her daughter to her because her mother was working all the time.
Yeah.
Was
one of them...
and the one thing that she loved the most being school, her mom started to take that away from her. Mm-hmm. So
one of them was concerned about leaving their mom behind. Was that Desiree? And we hear it a couple times where she's like, she felt like she was abandoning her mother. And I don't remember which one that was. I think that
must be Desiree. Because we don't actually hear Stella's point of view until we meet her in California.
True.
Mm-hmm.
So it must have been Desiree.
I was wondering if we were ever going to meet her.
True.
And in some respects, we still didn't fully meet her because because of her refusing the black side of her. I think she kept denying part of herself, even to herself.
Well, yeah.
It's like a lot of times for the longest time, I didn't really know what I looked like because I refused to look in the mirror, except to see parts here or parts there. So when I started looking at the whole of me, it was like looking at someone I didn't recognize. And I feel like maybe she hides the blackness so much. She's so afraid to see it in herself because if she sees it in herself, other people will see it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the ostrich in the sand. If I don't look at it, maybe no one else will.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really know what people, but then that fear of you don't really know what people see because you're not seeing it either.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe that's why she kept Kennedy at a distance, because maybe if Kennedy knew her, also Kennedy was a talkative child. Her mother blurted out the N-word at her, and then Kennedy used it later as a child.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, she just thought she was saying any other swear word.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one more question. What did you think about the ending? I think we might have started to talk about this a little bit. Were you happy to see Desiree finally leave Mallard? Do we even get that sense?
Yeah. I didn't have a feeling about her leaving Mallard.
I didn't either. At that point, I didn't really... Not that I didn't care. I mean, I kind of didn't care because I wasn't really that connected to the book in general, but it felt a little out of character. And I know she wanted to leave for so long that when she did and she came back, she complained once or twice about how she came back, but then she kind of just settled there. And I knew she had to, take care of her mother and all that, but I didn't feel that longing at the end of the book to leave that we had heard from her younger self. So I don't know. I was like, okay. That's good for her.
I felt like the story had kind of moved on beyond her when we got into the daughters and the granddaughters stories, so that she really was just on the outskirts of the story. Mm-hmm. So her leaving Mallard wasn't I feel like if she'd really, really wanted to leave Mallard, she would have.
But she didn't want to.
But after Jude was gone, her mother wasn't. There was a time period where I feel like when Jude went to college, I don't know that her mother was yet.
Yeah.
Showing.
I mean, she was older, so maybe she just felt like she needed to be
But look, she was so connected to the diner that people started calling it Stella's. No, even though it was Desiree. Sorry, Desiree's.
Yeah.
They started calling it Desiree's, even though it was still Luke's.
Lou's. Luke's is Gilmore Girl.
Sorry, too many diners. Anyway, overall, I really enjoyed it. I did enjoy it the second time a little bit, not more though, because I felt like I got to ingest and connect with the story, listening to it at 1% at one speed the first time. especially because it does jump around a lot.
Yeah.
In different time frames. When I went through the second time, I was like, oh yeah, but that's still just, it's more confusing.
I really tried hard to pay attention to chapter titles when they were like, Part 6, 1968 to 1970. Yeah. I was like, okay,
I'm horrible at
got
that.
it. Like, yep. I normally am, but once I realized that that's what we were doing, jumping around, I was like, oh wait, no, go back. I gotta know.
That was so startling the first time.
Yes.
Because I'm like,
oh, what happened?
Yeah, I'm really invested in Desiree Ann early.
Yeah.
And then
bam.
Oh,
6 years in the future or whatever.
Hi, Jude. I didn't even like really
Maybe
catch your name the first time.
Sense, yeah, exactly. Maybe that's why I have no sense of time when the years actually happened, because I just skimmed right over those chapter titles.
I tried to pay attention as best I could.
You know, this is not the first time I've not done that and paid and kind of suffered confusion from it. So
well, it's a little bit like maybe it's, you know, in a Russian novel, not learning people's names, right?
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. So you're gonna be at sea if you don't pay attention to people's names and
That's
create
true.
a chart. This time jumping storytelling, it's an interesting device because we really come up against it quite a bit.
It's a lot easier to wrap your head around, I think, when you're reading a physical copy of a book.
Yeah.
Because you can flip back and reference that page and be like, what year are we in?
Yeah.
And you can see it, a timeline right in front of you, you know, versus when you're just in the middle of an audiobook. You're like, what? Because you don't want to lose your place.
Who got off the plane?
What year are we in?
Yeah.
Well, okay then.
So, thank you for joining us.
Our
discussion on
the
Vanishing
I would be interested in reading more books from her.
Well, I did start this other book that came before. So this was her second book. Mm-hmm. The first one is called The Mothers.
Mm-hmm. I've seen that.
But I'm only like in the first couple chapters. So I just started that. And I am starting to get physical copies. The problem is I just don't have the patience to. A lot of times I have to wait to order it or wait for it to come in. And I'm like, I just want to start reading it or just listening to it now. So I get halfway through a book before the copy. I actually get a physical copy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I am starting to try to wait until I have a copy in my hand. Because you're right. Being able to flip through and at least find your place and make notes, it makes
super, life easier for a book like
this
in this scope of years.
Audition this. It's your turn next, Katie. But I just came across a well-recommended book that's only 19 hours and 35 minutes.
Oh gosh,
only yeah, no,
only 19 hours.
Fine.
I mean, you could. How long was Grapes of Wrath?
Grapes of Wrath was only like 12.
No, it was longer than that.
It was way
I'll
longer.
Look it up. It felt like many more. I get it.
It was 20 years worth of listening.
Yeah, right.
At 5 times speed.
It's not whatever I said. Oh no, it's more. It's 21 hours.
See, I'm telling you flipped your digits there. 12 hours.
It was an honest error. Also, maybe I remember that way because I was listening to it on double speed at some point.
Yeah. It took me a road trip to get that book finished.
But I'm glad we can mark it off our literary.
I'm glad I read it.
Yeah.
I just complained a lot in the process.
It's something interesting I was thinking about because I'm almost done with the Odyssey, and it's interesting. I'm probably enjoying it more because we read Circe.
Yeah, probably.
But there's something like almost dutiful about reading an old book, you know, that's part of that so many other works have built off of or referenced. It's like
it probably feels very satisfying.
Well, it's just showing up to be like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then the world was made. You know, it's like so there's almost like a little. It's not that exciting. I'm enjoying the Odyssey, but it's not that exciting.
What else have you been reading? Anybody?
I started the Song of Achilles, which is Madeline Miller's first book, and I got pretty far into that, and I was like, "Stop it! You're never going to finish the Odyssey. Go back and finish the Odyssey." But I think it's going to stand up as well as Circe. So if you guys enjoyed her, but that is about all I did.
Okay.
I reread a couple books because I thought I'd go back and I did a couple. It was the Alice in Wonderland series. I talked about this last time.
You did.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that I was starting. Well, yeah. So A Blade So Black and A Dream So Dark. That was really good. But I am reading a book called Coffee Land, and it is really good. I'm gonna see. Give me a moment to try to find the
What was the second one? A Blade So Black and what?
A Dream So Dark.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good. Really, really good. Highly. Oh, let me get the author's name of that. That is by L.L. McKinney. Really good. I just want more. And then I am reading a book that I did get the paperback version of it from Timber Books that came in. It's called Coffeeland, One Man's Dark Empire and the Making of Our Favorite Drug by Augustine Sedgwick. It's nonfiction, but it is really good. I mean, it talks about, like, did you know that some of the first beans are from islands called Mocha and Java? Mm-hmm. Those are real places. I knew Java was, but Mocha, M-O-K-A.
I did not.
And that it's about the beginnings of the coffee plantation. In some places, coffee was traded like as a monetary thing, but even the treatment of workers in the beginning, even how freeze-dried coffee, the main person is, I forget his name, but is
Folgers?
Hill.
Oh,
Hill.
okay.
Folgers comes later.
Oh.
Not related to Hill's Brothers, which is another coffee. They were coffee and other, they were like merchants in California. A lot of this is connected to California too, so it's just really, really interesting, even from the making of it, the drying of it. At some point, there were so many coffee plantations that he figured that he could keep the workers on the plantation by creating kitchens off of the fields, so that if he provided food for that he could get the children's labor into there. But even how the chemistry of coffee and, Post in Kellogg. I don't know if you knew this, but the Kellogg that we think of cereal, he wasn't into cereal at first. He was into sanitariums.
Yep. Oh, I knew that.
Yeah.
He's a weirdo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so is
Dude.
Post. It's
Yeah.
like, he makes me think
Both
of
of them.
breakfast cereal very differently.
Yes.
But so there's all these interconnected things going on. Anyway, Coffeeland. I highly recommend it.
I read a cute little romance novel. Actually, did I talk about the terrible one I read last time?
I think so.
Okay.
Like, you kept hoping it would get better.
Yeah, it was stupid. And no, maybe I didn't talk about it because I think it's been within the last month. But I read one that I'm not going to mention because I don't remember the name of it. But it was terrible. But I finished it, and then I started. It was like a series, and I was like, well, maybe I'll start the second one. It was terrible, so I didn't go any farther. I'm like, no, I was like, maybe it'll be better. It wasn't. And then I read this one called Love Lists and Fancy Ships by Sarah Grunder Ruiz, which was actually very enjoyable, and I really liked it, and I thought it was pretty well done, and it was also a little heavier than I thought it was going to be. I was like, oh, this is, a light, cute summer.
Tell me the name. Love Lists, like I made a list.
Yep, and Fancy Ships. Very much enjoyed it. It was, I read that one, like, with my eyeballs, not my ears. And I liked that one. And then I'm about halfway through one called If the Shoe Fits. And it's a meant to be novel. Like, it's a series of novels. And this is by Julie Murphy. And it is a meant to be novel. They are sort of collaborations with Disney. And they're, like, romance novels inspired by or retellings of, like, classic Disney movies. So If the Shoe Fits is like a retelling of Cinderella.
Oh,
and then there's one
fantastic.
called something about books. I can't remember. I haven't read that
By
one
the
yet,
Book?
but By the Book. And that is by one of my
Beauty and
favorites, Jasmine Guillory. She's fantastic. She wrote that one, and that's, like, inspired by Beauty and the Beast. So I was like, and they're very cute and, very sweet. I will say the narrator of this book, the If the Shoe Fits, is so obnoxious, but I'm enjoying it enough that I'm gonna power through. But she really wanted to be an actress, or like she must be, because her voice work is very expressive.
By the Books, that the narrator, that one sounds familiar. Sarah Hollis.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, she does sound familiar. But yeah, it's very cute. I'm gonna finish it.
Right, that's a premise I could get into.
It's very cutesy. And so far, because it's a Disney collaboration, they're very clean. So I think it's fine. But
they started with my two favorites, Beauty and the Beast and Cinderella.
I wanted to read the Beauty and the Beast one because that is my favorite, but Cloud Library only had this one available, and I'm trying not to pay for any books if I can help it.
Fair enough.
But yeah, it's fine.
Maybe as a treat.
Yes.
Achieve.
I have a hold on it, so maybe eventually it'll come in, and then I can listen to or read that one too. But those are my books.
That's pretty good.
I had one more, but I'll go last.
You're
done. Oh,
yeah, I haven't finished.
You are last.
Okay, I got this one. I forgot. It's in the genre of Afrofuturism, but it's really good. It's called Noor, Noor, by I hope I don't butcher the name, Nnedi Okorafor. I can't. It's Okorafor. I don't want to butcher her name. I wrote it down. It's about a young disabled woman named Anwuli. Another name I don't want it, who goes by the code name AO, which means autobionic organism.
This is a plug for audiobooks, because you wouldn't have to do any of the work of learning how to pronounce it. The reader would tell you.
I know. And the thing is, I heard it on audiobook. I listened to it on audiobooks. But it's a futuristic Nigeria where advanced technology has enabled her to upgrade unformed or weakened body parts with cybernetic prosthetics created by the mega corporation Ultimate Core. And so to the north, a great sandstorm called the Red Eye blows perpetually. Something happens and she has to flee, and it's kind of breaking down the system. So it's this futuristic, if you're into sci-fi kind of futuristic stuff. But also, it's a person that she spent the early part of her childhood bedridden, but for a reason that she found out later. But she started replacing these parts with more, so that she became more, more cybernetic than human. But it's very interesting, and she finds love.
Well, cute. Before I start whatever you've selected for us, Katie, I might have to do some Christmas in July listening, because I downloaded all these Christmas
themed
novels when I was like, oh, this is a fun thing to listen to in December. They're all expiring in July.
Because
they were freebies from
from Audible.
You didn't get to download them and keep them, or they take them off?
Not the free ones. You
didn't pay for them.
Sort of like Netflix, where it's like, our licensing agreement's only for so long.
Right. So next month I chose Lessons in Chemistry.
Yay. Oh, good. Okay.
That was recommended by someone.
One of our regulars, thank you Xenia for recommending it, and also Arlene read it and gave it a glowing review as well. Okay. So shout out to both of y'all. I need to pull up the name of the author, but I have the blurb in front of me. So
it's Bonnie Garmus.
Thank you. Lessons in Chemistry. So chemist Elizabeth Zott is not your average woman. In fact, Elizabeth Zott would be the first to point out that there is no such thing as an average woman. But it's the early 1960s, and her all-male team at Hastings Research Institute takes a very unscientific view of equality. Except for one, Calvin Evans, the lonely, brilliant, Nobel Prize-nominated grudge holder who falls in love with, of all things, her mind. True chemistry results, but like science, life is unpredictable, which is why a few years later, Elizabeth Zott finds herself not only a single mother, but the reluctant star of America's most loved cooking show, Supper at 6. Elizabeth's usual approach to cooking, combine 1 tablespoon acetic acid with a pinch of sodium chloride, proves revolutionary, but as her following grows, not everyone is happy. Because it turns out, Elizabeth Zott is not just teaching women to cook, she's daring them to change the status quo. And I thought that sounded like something that I could get into.
It sounds like Julia.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, that sounds great. So
I'm in.
That was an easy choice. I was like, okay, that's what we're reading. When I heard
that's awesome.
So yeah, Lessons in Chemistry, and we will talk about that in the middle of August. So we'll see you guys then. And in 2 weeks from now, we'll have our regular podcast episode out. So make sure you come back for that. But we'll talk to y'all later. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Happy reading.
Strings Unraveled is a production of Strings and Things Studio, with Anne Lekravin-Cazzoli, Kaity Von Rader-Fraker, and Karin Wilmoth. Recorded and edited by Kaity Von Rader-Fraker. Find us online at stringsandthingsstudio.com or on Facebook or Instagram at Strings and Things Studio. You can email us at stringsandthingsinfo@gmail.com.